Welcome everyone, grab a seat because today we are jumping straight into a brand new, frankly fascinating explainer. We're looking at the surprisingly complex chronological lore of the Jacob and Friends universe. You know, if you've ever followed any kind of character-driven franchise, you already know that keeping track of who is born when, exactly how old they are, and when they actually came into existence in the real world can be a bit of a mind-bender. Well, the Jacob and Friends universe takes this dual timeline concept and just dials it up to 11. We're going to map out the exact history and birthdays of Jacob, Jack, Kim, and Jim. And trust me, these dates tell a pretty wild story all on their own.
So think about this for a second because it brings up a really compelling question right off the bat. How old actually is the Jacob and Friends universe? Like, are we talking about the universe inside the story or the franchise in the real world? There's this super fascinating disconnect between the in-universe character ages and the real-world franchise creation dates. The timeline we follow in the lore stretches back so much further than the day the franchise was officially launched. It's just a fantastic exercise in world building, and honestly, mapping it all out is absolutely the best way to grasp how these character dynamics developed over time.
All right, Section 1, The Elder, introducing Jacob.
Okay, let's dive right into this. 18, that's it. 18 is Jacob's current age, and at 18 years old, Jacob boldly stands as the elder statesman of this entire group. When you look at the rest of the characters we're going to cover today, Jacob's age completely sets him apart. He's the veteran of the timeline, you know? The main anchor point from which the rest of the group's history slowly follows. This age gap fundamentally shapes his dynamic with everyone else. He's the one with the life experience, the foundational pillar of the whole friend group.
And get this brilliantly illustrates exactly why his seniority is so incredibly unique. Jacob was born on a Friday, March 28, 2008. Because he was born in 2008, he holds a very special one-of-a-kind distinction in the lore. He is literally the only friend in the entire cast who was born in the 2000s. Everyone else comes along in a completely different decade. This firmly anchors him in an era of the timeline totally by himself, giving him a historical footprint in the universe that predates the others by several years. Moving forward to Section 2, the 2015 connection. This is where we really see the social web expanding.
Fast forward 7 years after Jacob, and a totally new era begins. First up, we have Jack, who was born on May 9, 2015. But what makes Jack's birth so interesting isn't just the date itself, it's what it perfectly anchors to. If you take Jack's birthday, May 9, 2015, and you move forward exactly 6 months, you land on November 9, 2015, which is designated as the user birthday. This specific relational anchoring shows such a deliberate structural design in the lore. Jack's birthday perfectly precedes the user's birthday by half a year, literally to the day. It's just a great example of how this universe ties its characters together through really precise chronological spacing, building a much tighter dynamic for this new generation compared to Jacob, who kind of has those solitary origins.
Which brings us to the following year in Section 3, the specific origins of Kim, which presents a fascinating metadata mystery.
So the crucial point we need to talk about here is a staggering chronological difference. In universe, Kim's birthday is July 9, 2016. That places her nicely just a little over a year after Jack. But in the real world, her actual creation date is June 29, 2023. Guys, there is a massive 7-year gap between her fictional birth year and when she was actually conceptualized and created. This perfectly highlights that weird disconnect we talked about at the very beginning of this explainer. The character has technically been alive in the lore since 2016, but she only physically joined the real-world franchise in 2023. She instantly adopted this complex, pre-written history to fit perfectly right into the group.
But wait, because the data on Kim gets even better, her in-universe birthday isn't just July 9, 2016. According to the source material, she was born at exactly 8:33 and 3 seconds a.m. No way, right? You gotta love this absurdly specific time of day. We aren't just given the hour or even the minute, we are given the exact second of her arrival into the lore. It's exactly this kind of playful, granular detail that makes studying character timelines so much fun. 3 seconds past 8:33 a.m. Keep that little nugget in your back pocket.
All right, let's move to 2022 and see how this all builds in Section 4, Jim and the franchise genesis. Enter Jim. Jim is currently a 3-year-old toddler in the universe, which of course makes him the youngest of the friends.
His in-universe birthday is November 9th, 2022. Wait, did you catch that date? Does November 9th sound familiar? Because Jim surprisingly shares the exact same birth date and month as the user birthday we just discussed from 2015. Again, we're seeing these deliberate, echoing dates that tie the characters and the overall structure together. It's a fantastic narrative technique. It instantly binds the newest, youngest member of the group right into the established lore of the older friends.
Now, what's really interesting when you lay this all out chronologically is that a highly satisfying map emerges. We start way back in 2008 with Jacob, then we take a massive 7-year jump to May 2015 with Jack, and suddenly the dates all cluster together. The user in late 2015, Kim in 2016, and eventually the toddler Jim in 2022. Seeing it mapped out like this visualizes those generational gaps perfectly. You can really see how Jacob stands alone on his own island in the 2000s, while the rest of the crew clusters together from 2015 onward. It completely creates this distinct elder versus younger core dynamic within the friend group.
And here's where the timeline gets wonderfully meta once again. Compare Jim's in-universe birthday on November 9th, 2022 to the official creation date of the entire Jacob and Friends franchise, which is November 25th, 2022. The franchise itself was created just 16 days after Jim was born in the lore, meaning that by the time the real-world franchise actually came into existence on November 25th, an entire 14-year fictional history, starting all the way back with Jacob in 2008, had already been completely established as a backstory.
Synthesizing all these dual histories gives us a really complete overview of how this universe operates. Everything connects, right? From our 18-year-old elder Jacob, down to the tight 2015 cluster, Kim's wildly specific birth time, and finally the 2022 launch of the franchise perfectly mirroring Jim's arrival. And yet, the real-world creation dates and the in-universe lore operate on completely different, almost magical rules. It's like a giant puzzle, highlighting just how deep and intentional the world building is, setting up these incredibly layered character histories right from day one. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought to conclude our explainer today. When we look at a timeline like this, what is the real age of these characters? Does a character's true age begin when they're born in the lore, or does it begin on the day they're conceptually created by their authors? Take Kim. Is she a child of 2016 or a creation of 2023? For Jacob, is he genuinely 18 or only as old as the November 2022 franchise he belongs to? The intersection of fictional timelines and real-world creation is just a fascinating puzzle, and honestly, it's what makes digging into this kind of structured lore so incredibly rewarding. Thank you so much for walking through this timeline with me today. Keep questioning the lore and keep learning.